For those of you who I haven't had a one-on-one conversation with, I am Teresa. I'm a copywriter here. We started in March. If we haven't had a chance to chat, please hit me up. But the impetus behind this presentation began during a virtual happy hour. We were talking about social media platforms and whether young people were using LinkedIn as a primary platform, whether anyone was still on Facebook, why everyone was so hot and bothered over TikTok. And so it was presented as an opportunity to those of us there that if anybody wanted to take the reins and explain all of this, then we were welcome to. So I'm now going to put my hundreds of hours on TikTok to good use and make it your problem. But I wanted to get into how algorithms as a copywriter are changing the evolution of storytelling. And it's not going to be news to anybody that time and attention is narrowing. And so the way that we respond to content is shifting, and that's changing narrative structure. And the way that it's also responding is that algorithms are now taking those narrowing time and attentions, responding to them, and making platforms easier to consume and narrowing it more and more narrow time and attention spans. And that feeds into time and attention narrowing in too. And so it just kind of becomes this like Ouroboros self-eating cycle where algorithms are making it more and more self-consuming. So when we think about traditional storytelling, this is what we were taught in high school English. You have your beginning, rising action, climax, falling action, resolution. It's a very symmetrical bell curve. This is a storytelling structure that you see across most Western literature, and it's what we're used to. And so when we have this as kind of the architecture of what we are expecting to tell, and then in the past 10 to 12 years, due to the rise of social media and the changes in which we consume content, now we have a storytelling architecture that looks a lot more like this, in which the bell curve has entirely shifted to the left, and instead we're looking at hook, climax, explanation, resolution. And so essentially now the expectation is to give away the punchline at the beginning of the joke. You go from step A to step F, and then the way that you get that long tail engagement, get people to stick around, is to make it interesting enough for the users, for the viewers, to see how you got from step A to step F. But because of narrowing attention spans, people aren't adhering to this model of storytelling anymore, because nobody's sticking around to wait to get to the juicy bits to the end. They want that immediate gratification. So this wasn't an immediate shift. It was very quick, considering we had hundreds of years of literature and then 10 years of social media, and now storytelling looks like this. But the way that this happened was that, and when you think about original platforms, kind of the OGs, Facebook, LinkedIn, MySpace, the intention there was to start with your inner circle. You were starting with the people that you knew in your real life. And the assumption was correct then that the people who you knew in real life would be providing you with information and content that you would find most interesting. And that was true then. But then we aged out, and then we got kind of into the Instagram, Twitter era of the mid-10s. And now we're still following people who are, engaging with us in real life, but in much larger quantities. We're also following celebrities, politicians, think piece authors, influencers, people who aren't involved in our day-to-day lives, but are instead aligning with our interest. And so it's still an intentional follow, but we're instead following people because of their alignment with our interests and the topics that they share, as opposed to their relevance to our day-to-day life. And then we come to where we are now in the TikTok era, and there doesn't even need to be that intentional follow anymore. Instead, it's not, the point of TikTok is usually not to be engaged with people who you know in real life. Instead, it's completely alignment with interest based. And so instead of following people, because you can see in this black box up top, that's my account. You can see that I am following nobody. People are following me, so you have the option to follow people, but you don't need to in order to be served content that you find interesting. So the way that TikTok platform works is that now you are reacting to content that is provided to you, and that will refine your algorithm and what you're delivered later on. So how do we create, well, let me actually just take a moment. I'm going to take a time to touch on attention management first. And this is kind of going to be an unfair example because I'm using a desktop view versus a mobile view, but I don't have Facebook on my phone anymore, so roll with it. So when you log on to Facebook, it's very busy. The priority is on choice. Facebook serves a lot of different purposes these days. And so, there's 10 places you can go on the left, notification icons up top, center scroll in the middle, but there's stories that can distract you up top. There's ads on the right, contacts on the right. There's a lot going on, right? And so the priority for Facebook is on user directive choice and deciding where you want to go and what you want to do. And now we contrast that to a layout like TikTok's, where you only have one single piece of media on your screen at a given time. So your attention is completely dedicated to what's on your screen right then. And, there's much fewer options. Again, this is mobile view, but there's much fewer options of places for you to go. And those notification icons at the bottom will disappear pretty quickly. And so fewer options of places to go and only one thing for you to pay attention to at a time, it is like narrowing in the limited focus that users have onto just one thing. It's not asking a lot of their viewers, right? And then along the side, on the right side, we'll see that all of the buttons on the right side, a third of the buttons on the screen are dedicated to engagement, follow, like, comment, share. And so that's really, you can see the difference in priority between choice and engagement, right? And so when an entire third of the buttons on screen are, dedicated to engagement, that tells you that TikTok's priority is to get people to react to content in order for the algorithm to refine what they are served so that they'll stay on the platform longer and therefore, feed the success model of TikTok. So now, how do we create stories in this kind of environment? I'm going to actually let a TikToker tell you for herself.
The viewer algorithm is meant for retention. The real retention is in the creators and how that algorithm works. You know how you're making videos and they all have a pretty consistent amount of views, and then all of a sudden one or two absolutely blow up, go viral, it gets pushed to the For You page, you're getting comments, you're getting likes, you're getting follows, you're getting interaction. Then your next videos go back to your normal view count or even less. And no matter what you do, no matter how good the content you create is, no matter how much effort and time you're putting into it, no matter how similar it is to your content that blew up, it just will not go viral like that. That's by design. TikTok will blow up one or two of your videos and then suppress it again back to your regular view count so that you spend time on this app creating and going after that high again. So if your videos are not seeing the success of your couple viral videos, don't get down on yourself. That's how it's designed to keep you on.
So a couple things to unpack there, but I think one of the largest takeaways is that TikTok, in comparison to other platforms, and not saying that other platforms don't do this at all, but TikTok has an algorithm that's much more hands-on as it pertains to pushing creator content. And so in the sense that it's not arbitrary, right? It's not like TikTok will just like randomly scroll through all the user videos and decide one will go viral. The way that it works is you make a video, you post it, and then TikTok will show it to a trial audience essentially. And depending on how they engage with your video, if they watch it all the way through, if they like, if they comment, that'll determine whether it gets pushed out to an even broader audience and so forth and so forth. But like this TikToker said, there are times in order to keep all creators motivated and feeling like it's worth it to keep creating on this platform, the algorithm will facilitate that rise to fame. It'll push it to a broader audience. It'll push it to the For You page with more regularity. And sorry, for those of you who are unfamiliar with terminology, For You page is the algorithm delivered content on the main feed that you saw up top. But yeah, so anyway, it'll get pushed and you'll get that high. And there was one video that had over 500,000 views and it was very exciting. And then the next few videos, not so much. So this is very much, how it works. But because TikTok doesn't prioritize followers in the same sense that an Instagram, a YouTube, or a Twitter does, the priority for TikTok is to deliver content that is most relevant right then. And so even if a TikToker has a lot of followers, if they're not creating content that's relevant, it's not going to get pushed out. And so like you saw that I wasn't following anybody, but I was still getting content. There's just not the same weight on legacy as there is on YouTube, whereas people with the most followers tend to get the broadest views. So it's just a much different approach to the environment that you're creating in. And then for viewers, a little bit of a trigger warning. There's some dark humor about child abuse here, so if that's sensitive, then wait till the video is over or hit mute.
About the algorithm?
I'm just saying, if the For You page can figure out what I was thinking about, on my break at lunch, and that I was, hit as a child, then maybe I should be able to figure out who my soulmate is, too.
Okay. We use humor to cope here. But anyway, so one of the hallmarks of the TikTok experience is just how eerily specific the For You page can get for you. And it's not because you put in when you first log into the app and you're like, what are you interested in? You don't put like recovery from childhood trauma. That's not how it works. But based on how you engage with the content that you are served, then that's going to narrow down the type of content that you get more and more. Whether you watch videos all the way through, like, comment, share them, et cetera, every single interaction is going to be weighted differently. A like is not the same as a comment, is not the same as a share. And the ways that that's taken into consideration for the algorithm will then determine what content you get served in the future. And so the next logical follow-up question to that is, doesn't this create a wicked echo chamber? The answer is yes, it does. TikTok has intentionally, however, inserted interruptions into your stream of content, and it'll bring in creators or topics that aren't, in your quote-unquote regularly scheduled programming to try and broaden you and give you the opportunity to at least react to them. It's like you very well might scroll away immediately if it's not something that resonates with you. But, on the other hand, now you're exposed to something and maybe you do find it interesting. And so now the algorithm will take that into account and start showing you more and more of that thing. And so it'll kind of follow your interest as they develop, as they evolve, as opposed to adhering to the interest that you set at the beginning. So what does this mean for the B2B world? The takeaway from this presentation is not that we should go to all of our clients and tell them to put ad spend behind TikTok. That's not what we need to do here, but rather this is kind of an informational setup for what's going on in the collective consciousness and kind of bringing everybody up to speed in terms of how people are expecting to receive content and how they're interacting with it, as well as the priorities that are shifting between following and versus engagement and things like that. And now that other platforms have seen, TikTok's success and seen how algorithmically driven content delivery is succeeding, other platforms are reacting to that as well. And so, we'll see, and we kind of already are seeing on some other platforms, emulation or mimicry of TikTok's models and so on and so forth. So in what is in our world and what is actionable, this is all going to be, contextually dependent, obviously, and take it with a grain of salt, but it's just things to think about in terms of what we're doing with our content strategy, with our marketing planning and whatnot to, try and stay as relevant as possible. So none of this is going to sound new. A lot of the things that I'm going to say here are like things that we know are best practice, but now it's a matter of how much we prioritize them compared to how much we prioritize them in the past. So first of all, creating content strategy that prioritizes discoverability. So as more and more platforms start to lean more and more on algorithmically delivered content, that's going to make it more important that whatever the platform may be, this is as simple as Google SEO, right? This is the theory behind that in terms of making content as discoverable as possible for the users who are seeking it out. Even now, the users who aren't seeking it out, but who might find it interesting if it comes across their path. Secondly, preferring more authenticity. I think that there is a general part of the reason why I believe TikTok has had such success is because there's a bit of a rebellion against like what I would call Instagram mentality, in the sense that Instagram as a platform was very editorial. It's best angle, best lighting, best size, best life, right? And it's just everything on there was very performative in the sense that you're trying to, make your life seem very dreamy and ideal, which, life isn't always about. And I think a lot of the kind of content that does well on TikTok is much more casually shot. It's not as editorial. It's more about what's raw and real in life. It's more about being relatable. And so the priority of content has shifted too, from that Instagram, like only show your best side, to the TikTok is tell me how it really is, right? And who knows, after TikTok has its moments, there might be a rebellion against that and go towards more editorial content again. We don't know that. But for now, the general audience, I would say, is preferring and resonating with that more authentic type of content. And that goes hand in hand with the opportunity for brands to humanize themselves and make themselves more readily available or accessible to their audience with creating smaller and more informal bits of content, right? Like, not saying throw the baby out with the bathwater, but there's a time and a place for, high budget videos and high octane campaigns, but having more like regular and minor micro engagement opportunities, I think is something that most people are coming to expect at this point. And they don't need to be high budget, they don't need to be super, strategized, but there's an opportunity for us to, look at clients, and I don't have any examples right now, but there's an opportunity to look at where we could be sprinkling in more micro engagement instead of just being like landing page, radio silence, brand video, radio silence, until the next big thing comes along, instead trying to keep people continuously on the pulse of what the brand is doing. And like I said, humanize them a little bit more, tell them, where they're succeeding, where they're failing, where they're trying to do better, what they're excited about. The options are endless there. And then lastly, shifting storytelling topography to that climax first model that we talked about in the very beginning. I think that a lot of people have felt like if we don't, put the meaty bits of the information at the end of, like, say, a video, then people aren't going to stick around and watch. If we give it all away up front, then they can just scroll on. I would argue to that people are going to scroll on regardless, and that's just kind of a cold, hard fact of life right now. And rather than sending them off without any usable information by trying to play coy or trying to game them into staying for the entire video, it's more important to put the information up front. So if they do scroll away after the first, 5 or 10 seconds, then at least they have the most relevant bits of information that you wanted them to walk away with regardless. And instead, kind of going back to that, model where you have the hook, climax, and then the explanation, right after that climax, pique their interest. And this, my challenge as a copywriter, and as somebody who's generally interested in content, my challenge is to figure out how to now engage their interest to get them to want to know the steps B through E between the steps A and F. So that is how I would approach taking a new look at how social media is influencing storytelling and evolving it, specifically TikTok. Safine.
Wow. Thank you very much for that, Teresa.
Woo! Yeah.
Excellent.
That was awesome.
And just look at our meeting chat to see the engagement that you've got there. That was great. That was excellent. And
Yeah, it was
Glad. I haven't seen.
blowing up.
Oh my God.
what's fabulous about that as well is we're hearing about this just because of a random spontaneous conversation on a VBAR chat. So that kind of just shows those random connections and getting together in collaboration, and it's an exact proof of that. So that's really, really good. And follow that, Chris Mann.